Saw dudes. Today's build was requested by Rabbit Chicken, who asked, could you make one based on Jack Churchill, the man who used a longbow and a sword in World War II? Yes, I can, and here it is. I'll cover some basic history, since I think his story is extremely interesting. If you want to skip straight to the build, use the chapters in the video. John Malcolm Thorpe Fleming Churchill was a British Army officer. He was better known as Fighting Jack Churchill or Mad Jack. He fought with a longbow, a Scottish broadsword, and a bagpipe. What a mad lad. Churchill was commissioned to the military after Germany had invaded Poland in 1939 and was assigned to the Manchester Regiment. After being sent to France, Churchill ambushed a German patrol, signaling the attack by raising his Scottish broadsword. There was a rumor that he killed a hostile in this action with a longbow, but he claimed that he had no bow since they had all been destroyed. When one general commented on Mad Jack's choice of weapons, he replied, "Any officer who goes into action without a sword is improperly dressed." Jack Churchill would later be sent to Burma, where the land war against Japan was especially brutal. However, upon reaching India, Hiroshima and Nagasaki had already been bombed and the war ended. He was pretty unhappy about the war ending, expressing the desire to keep the war going for another 10 years. Today's build is all about honoring Mad Jack's loadout, making sure that we have a bow and sword in hand. This does restrict our choices a bit, but not so much that we don't have any weapon variety at all. To increase our outgoing damage for all weapons today, I chose to use the Mask of Bacchus. This exotic replaces our dodge with a shift that has a 10-meter travel distance. On usage, it grants ×4 arc and stasis weapon surge for 11 seconds, which is equivalent to a 25% damage buff. On top of the damage buff, the rest of the build focuses on ad clear and hard crowd control, which will increase our killing potential. Now let's find our bagpipes. Gameloop time. Start combat by using your dodge to gain a 25% damage buff for your weapons. Use your weapons to kill off enemies, but watch your health bar to avoid death. Once the 11 seconds are up, use your grenade and melee abilities to slow or freeze enemies. Kill those enemies to refund class ability energy and repeat the loop. If you are using a bow, keep your distance and kill off enemies. If you're using a Scottish broadsword, get in the enemy's face after freezing them for added safety. Rinse and repeat. Silence and Squall will be our ad clear and crowd control super. It can do decent damage with our fragment choice and can refund our dodge at a pinch. Gambler's dodge is necessary for this build since our Withering Blade will help us refund our dodge energy after the 11-second lockout. Even though this build places a lot of emphasis on weapon damage, Marksman's dodge isn't necessary. Withering Blade applies slow stacks at long range, stuns overload champions, and can kill multiple weak enemies. This build uses Duskfield Grenade as it can apply slow stacks and freeze targets after a short period. The field it leaves is perfect for containing threats and increases our survivability. The aspects of Mad Jack are Grim Harvest and Touch of Winter. Grim Harvest causes killing slowed or frozen targets, spawn stasis shards, which grant melee energy on pickup. Small shards grant 10% melee energy on pickup, and large shards grant 50%. Touch of Winter causes Duskfield Grenades to have a 50% increased radius and creates a small stasis crystal on impact. Fragments for today are Whisper of Chains, Durance, Fissures, Refraction, and Shards. Chains grants a 40% damage resistance buff when near a frozen enemy or stasis crystal. Durance increases the duration of Duskfield Grenades and slow dealt to enemies. Fissures causes shattering enemies or crystals to deal an additional damage instance. It also increases the damage from directly shattering an enemy by up to 12.5%. Refraction causes kills on enemies affected by stasis debuffs to grant dodge energy based on enemy rank. Finally, Whisper of Shards grants 500% additional base grenade regen rate for 6 seconds after shattering a stasis crystal. Let's go over Jack Churchill's World War II gear. Starting with the Mask of Bacchus, I used Harmonic Siphon, Arc Siphon, and Special Ammo Finder. You can swap Arc Siphon for Heavy Ammo Finder if you want. With the gauntlets, I slotted Heavy Handed, Grenade Kickstart, and Focusing Strike. On the chestplate, I equipped Melee Damage Resistance, Charged Up, and a Harmonic Resistance. For the legs, I ran Recuperation, Insulation, and Stacks on Stacks. Stacks on Stacks can be swapped for Innervation or Absolution if it doesn't fit you. Insulation can also be swapped for Innervation. Lastly, on the cloak were Bomber, Reaper, and Powerful Attraction. I highly recommend going for high resilience with this build since we will be using swords. Operating in close range with this build is pretty dangerous and we only have resilience, freeze, and stasis crystals to protect us. I'm using tier 10, but you can use whatever amount you want. The next stats to max are mobility and discipline. Mobility will help us recover dodge energy for more massive backers uptime. Discipline will lower our Duskfield Grenade cooldown, which will synergize with all of our fragments. As usual, don't put points into strength. We have our dodge and stasis shards to take care of our melee regen. If you're enjoying the stasis build and history lesson, consider subscribing. There will be more on the way. Unfortunately, we don't have bagpipes in Destiny 2, but I made up for this by coming up with 3 weapon loadouts, all of which work pretty well. I encourage you to check each one out by using the timeline and chapters in the video. Weapon loadout 1 uses Verglaw Curve, Path of Least Resistance, or Techian Force, and Bequest. Verglaw Curve is our bow for the loadout and is extremely flexible. Kills with the bow grant 1 stack of Hail Barrage up to a maximum of 5 stacks. Hipfiring with stacks active releases a volley consuming all stacks and spawning 1 large stasis crystal per stack of the buff. Direct hits with an arrow from the volley apply 100 slow stacks. Intrinsically, Verglaw deals 37.5% increased damage against frozen enemies and stasis crystals. The catalyst causes applying freeze or slow to an enemy to reduce the charge time by 35%. This is great for cracking out our enemies with a fresh product. The crystals serve as a form of damage resistance, grenade regeneration, and potential AoE damage. Whisper of Chains will grant us more damage resistance, and Shattering Crystals increases our grenade regen by 500%. Killing frozen enemies will refund our dodge energy, and the loop goes on. Path of Least Resistance is our utility weapon just in case you need something to collect orbs and ammo from a distance. I usually use a shoot to loot and volt shot roll, but for this build I experimented with a 1 for all and stats for all roll. 1 for all increases damage by 35% for 10 seconds after hitting 3 enemies within 3 seconds of each. Stats for all has the same activation requirements, but increases stability, range, handling, and reload speed. 1 for all's damage bonus stacks with the 25% provided by Mask of Bacchus for a 68.75% total damage increase. Too bad it isn't 69, but oh well. If you want shoot to loot for the added utility, go for it. Techian Force is the best fusion rifle for damage in the game as far as legendaries go. It has a plethora of viable rolls, but I will suggest the easiest one to use for today. The roll I suggest going for is Arrowhead Break, Liquid Coils, Reconstruction, and Controlled Burst with the Stability or Charge Time Masterwork. Be sure to use a boss spec or major spec mod to increase the outgoing damage. This fusion rifle is super easy to use because it doesn't require much user input to be good. Reconstruction always works in the background, reloading and overflowing the mag after a short period. Controlled Burst is the king of fusion rifle perks in terms of ease of use. After hitting every shot in a burst, the perk grants 20% increased damage and a 10% decreased charge time for 2 seconds. Combined with our Arc Surge, we will have a 50% total damage increase. This will be our boss DPS weapon since our sword can get us killed. Bequest is the Scottish broadsword for this weapon loadout, and it is a beauty. Stats wise, the blade is a monster. It has the best in class impact and charge time. Also, it comes with a Bray Inheritance origin trait, which refunds 2% of our grenade and dodge energy on every hit. The 2 mandatory perks for the sword are Hungry Edge and Bound to Guard. There are 2 perk combos for columns 3 and 4. First up, there is Relentless Strikes and Surrounded. Relentless Strikes allows us to gain 1 ammo after scoring 3 powered hits within 2 seconds of each. This is perfect for boss DPS since it doesn't require a kill to proc. In column 4, we can use Surrounded, which grants a 35% damage increase when near 3 enemies. This will result in a 68.75% damage increase when combined with Mask of Bacchus. If you want to slice through an enemy and make Jack proud, go with this. Perk combo 2 is Tireless Blade and Chain Reaction, a roll geared towards eliminating crowds with only a few swings. Tireless Blade refunds 1 ammo after every other powered kill. Chain Reaction triggers an arc explosion on kill that does damage in a 3-meter radius. Tireless Blade's ammo refund can proc off of Chain Reaction, generating more ammo than is being used. It's not uncommon to generate 3 to 4 ammo off of 1 kill in a crowd. As a bonus, Chain Reaction hits proc the Bray Inheritance origin perk for even more ability energy gains. Easiest ability regen in my life. Weapon Loadout 2 uses Deliverance, Trinity Ghoul, and Half-Truths. Deliverance is our main DPS weapon for ranged enemies since we have a sword in the heavy slot. If you're gunning for raw damage and nothing else, you can't beat a cornered and surrounded roll. The perk combo decreases charge time and increases damage by 40%. This turns into a total damage increase of 75% or 83.75% with Enhanced Surrounded. I like this roll a lot, but it does require to be near multiple enemies, which is neither safe nor practical in endgame content without a Well of Radiance. I prefer to use a Demolitionist and Chill Clip roll most of the time. This will refund our grenade energy and slow targets from range, which will play into our fragment choice without much trouble. I know it lacks damage, but from a utilitarian standpoint, it more than holds its own. Trinity Ghoul will be our ad clear weapon that deep fries enemies from the inside out. Trinity Ghoul has an exotic perk called Lightning Rod, which causes precision kills to grant the next shot chain lightning capabilities. The Catalyst reduces the draw time by 108 milliseconds and causes Lightning Rod to proc off of any arc kill. The biggest weakness of this exotic is its lackluster base damage, making it struggle in higher end content. The Catalyst and Mask of Bacchus alleviate this a bit and make it a monster in enemy dense areas. Half-Truths isn't the damage monster that Bequest is, but that's okay because we are using it as a positioning tool. I use Tempered Edge, Swordmaster's Guard, Relentless Strikes, and Eager Edge. Relentless Strikes isn't used for boss DPS. Instead, I use it to take down adds and chunkier targets. Eager Edge propels us forward upon readying the sword. If you do this while in the air and carry your momentum with additional jumps, you can cover a ton of ground quickly. This is a speedrunner's best friend, just make sure you have friends that will revive you when you go into an encounter alone. Lastly, Weapon Loadout 3 uses Raconteur, Cloud Strike, and Half-Truths. This weapon loadout specializes in boss damage more than the 2 prior. Raconteur is a solid bow all around and is a weapon that I think is super slept on. It is a Stasis precision frame bow that can come with some pretty great perk combinations. In the first column, I would use Elastic Bowstring to bring down the draw time and increase the handling speed. This will negatively impact accuracy stat a bit, but that only reduces the aim assist cone, which is fairly large already. In the second column, I suggest using Compact Arrow Shaft, which increases handling and reload speed. Draw time and reload speed are the biggest factors limiting bow DPS, making these 2 perks the best options. Perk combos are pretty flexible here. You can go with Archer's Tempo plus Headstone, Successful Warm-Up, or even Explosive Head. I would argue that this bow is the best headstone weapon in the game given its range and high precision damage. If you want utility, you can try out Shoot to Loot and Explosive Head or Headstone. Shoot to Loot plus its Headstone goes all in on utility and synergizes with our subclass. Cloud Strike is our boss DPS weapon and can easily contribute meaningful DPS to damage phases. It is classified as a 140 RPM exotic sniper rifle. Scoring 3 precision hits within 4 seconds of each calls down 2 lightning strikes that do heavy damage. Killing an enemy with a precision final blow will call down a single lightning strike. The catalyst grants the gun 25 handling and triple tap, increasing its total damage potential. This sniper is a no-brainer when it comes to DPS. Plant yourself in a safe area and fire into an enemy's face. Mask of Bacchus can easily make Cloud Strike deal 1,000,000 total damage, which doesn't even factor in Well of Radiance or any other buffs provided by teammates like Weaken or Divinity Bubbles. Half-Truths was my choice for this loadout since it focuses on Cloud Strike being our main DPS option. Like Weapon Loadout 2, it will be our positioning tool. If you didn't hear the role from earlier, I suggest going for Tempered Edge, Swordmaster's Guard, Relentless Strikes, and Eager Edge. While using this sword, especially with this loadout, be careful to not lock onto enemies while using Eager Edge. If you do this in high-level activities, you will probably die since ads will lock onto you quickly. That is the build, everyone. I had a ton of fun making this one, and I'm glad I can deliver another history-themed video. While the purpose of the video wasn't to create a Stasis build, I'm happy that I went with that route. There are a lot of builds I'll be creating across Destiny 2 and Warframe. I would like to thank you all for your continued support. Currently, there are a lot of builds being suggested to me, and I appreciate that. However, I had some unsavory comments from others accusing me of stealing builds when I don't. If a build has been covered by other bigger creators, then I'll err on the side of caution. Plus, I know I don't steal builds because I came up with some before others, just like my Aegir Scepter Stasis Titan build. Sorry for the small rant, I just had to get it out there. I appreciate you all. As always, thank you for watching, and happy farming.